Welcome, everybody, back to the Johnny Drinks Podcast. I'm your co-host, Johnny, and I'm here with...
This is John.
And our good friend, CEO of Zeta Global and serial entrepreneur, David Steinberg. How are we feeling?
I'm feeling well. I appreciate you guys having me today.
Awesome. Well, we know now the sciatica is healing up.
Sciatica is getting better. Now I really sound old, so I appreciate that.
I've had sciatica. I'm 27 years old.
You lift a lot of weight, so I get that.
I stay active. So
yeah.
Well, yeah. So if you want to...
Yeah, I got to tell you that this is for me personally. Anytime I have friends on, it's special, right? It encapsulates a lot of things. It celebrates, and you have a great story. And those who like to tune into us not only enjoy the social part of conversation, but kind of getting to the bottom line. Well, how can they do? How can they accomplish? How can they be? All these things, success being at the top pillar for many people, they want to know how to get there. So who better than...
Well, they should be following John and Johnny. I mean, you guys know what's up.
Great.
I mean, I don't have neon lights with me, behind me when I sit at my desk.
We can get you one.
I'm good.
Don't worry, I got you.
You got a guy?
Yeah, I got a guy.
I am in New Jersey, right? You got a guy.
We always got guys.
You got a guy. You're all over the place. But before we get into, and you're going to kind of lead some of this too, you live in California. Is that your primary residence?
No, I'm a Florida resident.
Oh, you're
so let's
Florida.
be very clear here.
Go ahead.
We don't know who's watching.
Okay. No,
I am a Florida resident. I reside in Miami.
You reside in Miami. You have a home in New York. You have a home in California.
We have homes in a bunch of places. Okay. We are very blessed.
So, and that's the hard part of kind of knowing when you text where you are and the time difference. And that's why I got to be mindful.
This was
of
funny because a buddy, I'm taking some guys. In fact, I know you and I are having dinner tomorrow night. The next night, I'm taking a bunch of guys to, when's this going to broadcast?
We don't know. A couple of weeks.
Okay, great. Yeah. So I'm taking a few guys to Carbone the day after tomorrow.
Nice.
And one of the guys I invited was literally like Carbone in Miami or Carbone in New York. And I was like, New York.
Yeah, nice. Wow. And is there a difference, would you say, between the two? You've been
it's interesting.
So
there is a big difference. So first of all, I think what Jeff Zlotnick, Mario Carbone, those guys have done is insane. And my life's a little funny because the guys who run the Tao group, Jason, Noah, Paul, Andrew, are like among my closest friends. And Jeff Zlotnick is a friend, and you sort of get spread out with all these restaurant guys. But like as a typical New York Jewish guy, I love food. I love to eat. I love to drink. I would say that if you look at the Carbones, the New York Carbone is really authentic. Like you feel like you are walking into a New York Italian restaurant. It feels almost like historic.
Sure. And you can't duplicate that setting.
No.
Thompson Street,
well,
right?
And sort of Jeff knows that. So they went the other way. The one in Miami is so elegant and so hip. And so cool. And it's like got all like the beautiful people are at the Carbone in Miami. So when you go in, you feel like you're in like a very cool place and the food is still incredible. When you go to the one here, it's like all like guys. I mean, I'm sure there are a bunch of beautiful women there as well. But, unless my wife is coming with me, that's sort of not the metric by which I measure. But,
of course. And we've
smart man.
See, I'm smart.
Good. Smart man.
Not that my wife would ever watch me in a podcast. That'll never happen.
Maybe this is the one that changes your mind.
This is the third podcast I have done in my life.
Oh, really?
I get invited to do them probably daily, but this is number 3.
Wow.
Dan Nathan, who's also a very dear friend, CNBC, and then the Historic Society of the New York Stock Exchange invited me to come do a podcast with them and sort of like, I was like, we're 250 years old and this is going to go in the historic archive. And I was like, one day, maybe my grandchildren will see something like that. So I said yes, but this is number 3.
All right. Third time's a charm.
I feel
Hopefully I don't mess it up.
No, you're doing really well
great.
so far.
You're doing great so far.
Keeping everything in check. But we want to talk about, and to my point of the way we started the celebration part, what you've accomplished, what you're doing, and just kind of walk us through some of that. So John introduced you,
I thought he was
CEO.
Johnny. and
He's
you're
Johnny. So it's
You're
interesting.
confusing me now. I'm sorry.
And he's confusing our audience.
Right.
I am Johnny to the audience.
Nope, that's not true.
I think I am. I think I'm Johnny Drinks.
I
and
see
you're
controversy.
the guy who holds the
This
camera.
is much more interesting than what I do for a living. I mean, this is John, Johnny, Johnny, John.
Who's the John? Who's the Johnny? If there's one that's going to be a Johnny, one that's going to be a John, the older man has to be the John. What do you?
No, I think that the audience would relate to me as Johnny Drinks, and you're the guy who holds the camera. That's if we did that.
By the way, I do want to say one of my best friends is a guy named Billy Landman, and no joke, I always say that if you are, and I'm not sure I should or shouldn't say this. Billy just turned 70, which I can't believe because I've known him probably almost 30 years. If you're still getting called Billy at 70, you're a good guy. Like, you're like a good guy.
Yeah.
And here's the thing I love about both you guys. You could both be Johnnies.
All right.
There we go.
There we go.
We'll
So
take
let's
that.
keep it simple. But I do call him John. And I do call him Johnny, though, on other times, too. But for the most part, all right, we'll kind of.
I'm just going to call you
around
Big
that
Johnny
for a
and
little
Little Johnny,
That's
and you
perfect.
guys figure
That's
out
fine.
which is which.
That's perfect. There we go. We'll take that.
That's it. So CEO Zeta, right?
Zeta Global, yes.
Zeta Global. Specializing in marketing and AI, artificial intelligence. I caught you the other day on CNBC, as we touched on again as well. And, it's, while I know you, and Anthony's a friend of mine, working with you, it's hard to truly pinpoint, well, what exactly do you do? So let's kind of,
if you figure it out, let me know.
Well,
I
that's
mean,
what I mean.
I'd love to hear it.
Can you share some of that, and then also how you got into that and building this yet again another gangbuster of a business as an entrepreneur?
Well, first of all, what we do at Zeta, to answer your first question first, is we take a very large pool of first-party data. So we have 241 million Americans who are in our data cloud. And we use artificial intelligence to ingest trillions of marketing signals. What are people reading? What are they researching? What are they buying? Where do they go? Where do they come from? All of that. And we ingest it into a series of algorithms, which, today the common vernacular is artificial intelligence. And we're synthesizing, what do people intend to do next? Do you intend to get a new credit card? And if you do, we want to get one of our clients' information in front of you. Do you intend to churn off a cellular platform for one of our clients? We want to build a curriculum of contact that convinces you to stay with our client and not churn off. One of the interesting ways we do it is, so you've got the data, you've got the artificial intelligence, you're ingesting all that. We build intent-based scores. So we never tell our enterprise clients, this person's doing this, 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 and this, because that would be violating the consumer's privacy. What we're doing is we're saying that this individual has a 62% propensity to want a new credit card and an 85% likelihood to be credit approved for your product. And the curriculum of contact is then automatically built by other artificial intelligence algorithms. So if you think of one of the greatest quotes in marketing, which was said by Mr. Woolworth, who had founded a 5 and dime store, which, Johnny, I'm not sure if you were around for that, but the reality is that it's obviously.
If you were around, I was around.
100 years ago, I know you and I are the same age, so I can't tease you for that
I think I'm older than you.
by like a week.
You were born 1970?
So, yes.
Yeah. See, I'm older than you.
Yeah.
Respect your elders.
I'll be kind. But the reality is that what he said was, I know 50% of my marketing is a waste of money, but I don't know which half. What we're trying to do is remove the 50% of people from the marketing funnel before our clients spend a penny. So we're able to lower their cost to market by about 50%. We actually get much, much better than that. The longer you're with us, the more efficient we can make the marketing spend for our global enterprise clients. So sort of you take the data, you take the artificial intelligence, and then all of the marketing flows through that. So it is complex in that we own the third or fourth largest data set in the United States, yet we never sell our data to anybody at any price at any time. The data is the electricity that fuels the sale of our software. So we sort of bundle the data in with the software, and our clients buy software from us.
Okay, so advertising agency. Some of our friends.
Well, our closest, one of my closest friends, and the guy who actually introduced us, Dave the Man Penske,
Right.
who we're having dinner with tomorrow night. I can say that because this won't air for weeks.
Oh, cool. He's coming too.
You wouldn't even be coming if he wasn't there. You blew me off last time because Penske or Anthony weren't there.
No.
Oh, come on.
No.
We both know that.
No. This is like the third time we've tried to do this.
I'm teasing you.
And but now you made me forget my train of thought with the question.
Advertising agencies.
So take advertising. You take publicists. Okay.
Yes.
Now, they are the largest advertising agency in the world, right? Or one of. Okay.
One of.
So now they will leverage you to provide that intelligence.
Yeah, so
that
we can't talk about any of our clients. We don't have a release to do it. Dave is obviously one of my best friends, and Maurice Levy is one of my mentors and dear friends, and Artur, who is the CEO, is a certifiable genius and one of the great leaders of that world. We work with a lot of the different agency holding corporations. What we do is we help them more efficiently run marketing for their customers. So obviously I can't speak to what we're doing with publicists, but what I can say is we have a part of our company that literally helps very large advertising agencies to help run the activation of marketing campaigns and using our data, our AI, and then we own a DSP, a demand side platform as well, which we can use that to then run marketing through programmatic, CTV, online video, and other things.
Wow, throwing a lot of acronyms around.
I'm sorry.
But that's okay. No, but the point
Connected
is
television. So
again,
CTV,
it's going to pinpoint strategically versus just taking the Uzi of spraying.
Yes.
And you become much more laser focused.
By the way, I love the use of an Israeli gun in my presence. You're really going big on the Jewish thing today. I like that. But I'm sorry.
That was on purpose.
See,
No,
I got it.
not.
Your dad is that good.
I know.
Johnny's that good, Johnny.
I know.
But bottom line, our goal is to absolutely, positively target the individuals with the most relevant marketing to the consumer. We think that's the best thing for the consumer, and we think that's the best thing for the enterprise.
It's most cost effective, right?
I will note we do not work with any firearms companies, though.
Okay.
That's part of.
That's
That's
good to
actually
know.
one of a few verticals we don't focus
Probably
on.
safe to stay out of there.
Yeah, it's listen, it's I'll say something that I joke I'm a conservative Democrat or I'm a liberal Republican depending on which way you look at it,
Right.
which day of the week. But I happen to own a bunch of shotguns for skeet shooting, and it's something my son and I really enjoy doing. My son Carter, here typical kid, he's like an insane athlete.
How old is Carter?
Carter is 18.
And he does rowing? He does row?
He rows crew. He's a Division I rower in college. Won't say where. He is a monster, much like you.
Big guy.
He is huge. Yeah, he's a big guy. And he, I forget, he was like either co-captain of the football team at St. Albans where he went to school, and co-captain of the crew team where he went to St. Albans. He was an all-American high school athlete. He, I took him skeet shooting for the first time. Now I've been shooting my whole life, right? Like I've been doing it. And he literally just kicked my ass. He's never done it.
Oh.
He comes out. He's got such hand-eye
I was going to say, it's eye-hand
Well, and
coordination.
I made the mistake of bringing like a teacher with us, like a guy to like take us through all of the different, you go through these different types of how the skeet comes out.
Sure.
Is it like a little fake rabbit on the ground, or is it an eagle? No, you would never shoot an eagle, but like a duck flying away or a goose. You're not shooting at animals. You're shooting at
course.
like clay.
Clay.
But
Pigeons.
literally, the guy is like, oh yeah, just lead it by 3 feet, hold your breath, do this. I don't think he missed a shot after that.
No, I find the same way. I go with him. So we go to Thunder Mountain. Shout out to our Lambert family.
Tony Lambert, yeah.
And now there's a difference between skeet and
Clays, sporting clays. You've got sporting clays, trap, and skeet.
Ski, right?
They do trap and ski over there.
They do
Yeah.
trap and ski.
We
Yeah.
do the same. We do trap as well.
Same stuff.
So trap is what, horizontal?
I think trap is like all of it. Like it's like on the ground. Like you've got the fake rabbits and the fake squirrels, and then all of it's sort of going away. Whereas I think skeet is just aerial.
Yeah, that's what I believe. Yeah.
And listen, I'm chairman of this company called On Demand Pharmaceuticals, and the CEO is the former. He's a rear admiral who started his career, came out of the Naval Academy, went on a nuclear sub, got bored, went back, learned how to fly jets, flew jets off of aircraft carriers, went back, became a doctor, and ascended to being the chief medical officer of the Navy. He shoots, and I didn't even know this is a thing, professional ski. I'm only thinking of this because he couldn't take a call from me this weekend because he was at a tournament. And he'll shoot like 398 out of 400 and lose.
Wow.
I mean, he's world class. I'm joking about losing, but Admiral Hancock is doing this at a level that I couldn't. The whole point of my story is sort of my son came out and just sort of kicked my ass.
He was the admiral.
He was the admiral.
You should be proud.
I am proud. Oh, I'm very proud of all 5 of my amazing children.
5 children.
5 kids. I'm not messing around here, Johnny.
That's on top of everything else you have going on as being a great father.
Well, I'm not sure they'd all call me great. I do the best I can.
You have great moments.
I have great
Let's just
moments. What
understand
I
that.
say to my kids, which, it's funny, often gets me off the hook. Not off the hook, meaning like if they're being sort of critical of me, which kids, I'm sure, Johnny, can often do. I said, guys, listen, I'm literally doing the best I can here. And thank God I married 2 amazing women, my ex-wife and my wife, and they're both incredible mothers. And I try to be the best parent I can be.
Sure.
I'm not Ward Cleaver. Like, it's sort of not my MO.
Listen, it doesn't come with a handbook, right? Being a parent does not come with a handbook, and every kid is different. And there's that saying, you're only as happy as your saddest kid.
Yeah,
right?
your most unhappy kid. Yeah.
Yeah,
In fact, I first heard that from a guy named Stephen King, he was the president of Publicis. It's funny because my oldest daughter, Isabel, is graduating from college this week. It's why I'm on the East Coast.
Oh, wow.
And
congratulations.
She's amazing. I mean, she literally is off the chart smart, brilliant. She was a biology major on a pre-med track with a drama minor. She was in all the plays. I went to see her in a play. She was so amazing. And I was just talking to her the other day because we were sort of running down the logistics for her graduation weekend. And she was making sure that I sort of understood what I had to do. And I got it.
Ready.
Yeah, I was ready. I'm ready. And I remember, and I was telling her in a moment of reflection, there's a picture that I keep on my desk of her the day she was born. And I have my hand on her in like a loving way, and she's looking up at me with these huge blue eyes, which all 5 of my kids, fortunately, ended up with beautiful blue eyes. And she's just looking at me. And I told my daughter the other day, that was the moment that I felt like an adult. Like I had never felt like an adult. And my wife would tell you today, I don't act like an adult very often, but it was literally that moment. So she and I were on the phone this weekend, and I was telling her that was the moment I felt like an adult. And I was like, and by the way, you're becoming an adult. Now, my daughter is a typical, super brilliant, beautiful, I say, sort of woman. And she's like, Dad, I've been an adult for 4 years. I'm 22. And I was like, I get it. You're graduating from college.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a great story.
Is that your
I can
oldest
relate to that.
That's my oldest daughter. Yeah. So I have 4 daughters and a son.
Oh, wow.
As I just talked about my oldest daughter and my son, my middle daughter, Amelia, is unfortunately for her or me, she is, to me, she's just so much like me. So she has got the highest EQ along with an incredible IQ, much higher than me on both. And she's gorgeous. And she's, Dean's List in college, just has some of the most amazing friends in the world. I love hanging out with her and her friends. And, they're super cool to include me and stuff, which I find fun. They all go, Das! Which is what a lot of people call me.
Yeah,
So
Das.
it's fun.
David, what's the A stand for?
Adam. David
Adam Steinberg. All right, got it.
You're the cool dad.
Wow.
Cool. And he probably picks up the tab.
I do.
Oh, well,
and
there
by
you
the
go.
way, they're the smart ones because they know
There you
I
go.
pay for
There
everything,
you
right?
go.
And by the
There
way,
you
I'm
go.
happy to pay for everything just to hang out with them.
That's the price of admission.
Trust me, it is.
I'm in there myself plenty of times. So, well, let's dive into like all of this. Like we said, the success that comes with it. We talked a little bit.
I try to
about it.
avoid that at all costs. So that's sort of like why I keep taking it off in other tangents.
Yeah, no, and it's okay. My point is, this is so interesting for me because, like, how do you get started? Like, so now you build and master out this, but where do you start?
So I became an entrepreneur for the same reason most of us do. I couldn't get a job. So I came out of school 3 or 4 great recessions ago. It was 1990 when I sort of came out of school. And it was just at the time we were in a recession. And I am very dyslexic. So I was not the world's greatest student. I was ADD and dyslexic. And I continue to be both. You sort of learn workarounds for them. I can do sort of mathematical equations in my head into the billions, but I can't spell.
Isn't that
So
interesting?
people who are my friends or my coworkers have to be able to speak David because I spell so poorly that spell check fixes it with the wrong words. So I came out of school. And for many, many years, I always employed sort of a chief of staff. It sort of was Zach. And before that, it was a guy named Michael. And then after that, it's Brendan today. And a big part of it is I would hand them emails or texts before I'd hit send to get them to spell check it. Now I don't care. If you want to think I'm a total moron, great. It's all good.
Sure.
But so I came out of school with that lens, right? And I sort of, like a lot of guys my age, I sort of thought I would end up either a lawyer or an investment banker. And I got this really cool internship being, I guess, an intern for a legislative correspondent on the Judiciary Committee on the Hill under Senator Kennedy with a then very young Chairman Biden, who was chairing the committee. And I worked for President Biden. He was not President Biden at the time, and worked for Ted Kennedy. And it was an amazing experience. I think I primarily got the job because I had played tennis in college, and Senator Kennedy liked playing tennis. So I would occasionally play with him and hit with him, and we had fun with that. Yeah. And, bottom line, I ended up learning all about wireless. And I was we were just starting to sell the additional license block. So sort of when cellular started in this country, there was an A license and a B license. And the B license went to the local exchange provider, which in New York would have been, at the time, Bell Atlantic, now today called Verizon. If you were in Florida, it would have been Bell South. If you were in California, it would have been Pacific Bell, or so on and so forth. And then they sold an A license, which a bunch of guys started buying. So they were buying licenses, and I was like, oh, this is going to be really interesting. And I figured out quickly I wouldn't be a good government employee. So I ended up responding to an ad, actually. I ended up in the insurance business, selling accidental disability insurance to self-employed people door to door. I remember I had a really unusual upbringing in that my father was an Ivy League educated MBA accountant who spent his whole career and ascended to one of the leaders of PricewaterhouseCoopers. And my stepfather was an entrepreneur who was born the 9th of 9 children into abject poverty in Brooklyn and ended up being sort of the American dream. Built a business called Getting to Know You and sold it and did really well. And I remember calling both of them and telling them I was going to go sell insurance. And my dad sort of was like, are you nuts? Like, dude, you're going to law school. Like, we're going to dial this in. And I called my stepfather and he was like, it will be the single greatest thing to ever happen to you to really learn how to hear the word no and learn how to sell. I did that for a short period of time. I was successful, but I also figured out quickly that was not for me. And then I started a company called Sterling Cellular in my basement in 1991 on the premise that cellular was the future of communication. Everybody at that time was selling it as a consumer product, but at the time I saw it as a business tool.
So just to stop right there, you said 1991 in your
Yes.
basement, Sterling Cellular.
Yes.
And John and I had talked about technology.
Johnny.
My Johnny. Talked about technology 20 years ago, current day, and 20 years forward. And I said in early 2000, 2001, 2002 was the first time I had a flip phone. Okay. Prior to that, it was the big box, the big camo, the big
We called those
Army
the
field,
bag phones.
the bag phone. So
Yep.
you're starting in 91.
Well, so in 90
with what that conceptually that bag phone?
I would say about half the phones we sold were either bag phones or installed in people's cars. And the other half were the first generation of handheld phones, which we called candy bars at the time. They looked like candy bars. And there was, companies that you'll have never heard of, like Technophone and Uniden. Well, Uniden makes like cordless phones now, and they're a big Japanese conglomerate. But AudioVox was making these things. And
I had an AudioVox.
yeah. So those were like the really early adapters because they were all making sort of, telematics products, car stereos and stuff like that. So they're like, oh, this is a logical extension because back then you put the phone in the car. When we started in 1991, it had just sort of started with the candy bar phones. And back then, the big challenge was the phones that were in bags and could go in your cars were 3 watts of connectivity. And the phones you can carry in your hand can't go above 0.6 of 1 watt of connectivity. So you had to be really close to a cell site back in 91 to make one of those handheld phones work. Now, of course, it's all ubiquitous because there's towers everywhere. Interestingly enough, the phone you carry in your hand is still 0.6 of a watt, but 90% of the time you're connecting to your Wi-Fi or some other
Isn't that interesting?
close area thing. So, but we started on the premise that they were going to be business tools because they were really expensive.
Sure.
So I started cellular in my basement and I started hiring salespeople from the insurance business to go business to business to sell people cell phones as a business tool versus selling them as a retail product. That was my first company. And by the way, I did a series of cellular companies after that, but that was sort of how I originally became an entrepreneur.
Wow, that's a great story. I love rewinding it that far back because,
Because you're my
To
age
your
and you
point-
remember that time.
right. And to your point, though, the car phone was basically hardwired. Like it was in the car.
We
like
had
you said, like a radio.
We had a guy who worked for us. His name was Louis. I can't believe I remember this. He was the funniest guy I ever met. And Louis, we had a truck, and Louis would come right to your office and install the phones right in your back of your office. That was our whole model.
Crazy. Yeah.
Then, in order to take the business to the next level, we had to start opening retail stores, and we opened a bunch of retail stores and ended up doing that as
Okay,
well.
so after Sterling, you found something else, I guess.
Yeah, so there was Sterling Cellular, Sterling Communications, and Sterling Wireless, because obviously I didn't have very good naming capabilities. I then founded a company called Infonic, which was the largest seller of wireless phones on the internet in the world. We took that public in what became I think at its peak, it was worth $1.7 billion. I then left there. That company got into a bit of a jam during the debt crisis of 2007, 2008. Private equity firm bought it. They did really well with it. They ended up selling it to Walmart Technology Labs, and that ended up becoming the business. If you ever see the commercial for Talk More, those ads that run. That was my old company. That was what we did. We built
wow.
mobile virtual network operators. You'll note I didn't say MVNO because you already made fun of me for acronyms. Our biggest client, was Walmart, and they sort of rebranded the company to a company Simplexity, and then they sold that. But it was interesting, and I learned a lot about what to do and what not to do. I sort of joked it was the single best learning experience of my life, and I've heard this said, and I certainly didn't feel it at the time, but I've heard the sort of term, and I use it often. You either win or you learn. There is no fail, right? And I learned a lot from that experience.
Sure.
And then from there, I found out unexpectedly that I had a wireless non-compete. So when we took the company public, I had signed a long employment agreement that I hadn't bothered to read because I was sort of the largest shareholder. I was the chairman, CEO, and I didn't think anybody sort of stuck it to me, but the guys who bought the company enforced the non-compete in wireless. So after 17 years in the wireless space, I sort of woke up one day and I was like, what am I going to do next?
Yeah, now what?
So I started a fund. I started an investment fund, which still exists today, called Cavis Investment Corp. And I was looking around for stuff to do. And I sort of started looking at data. And back then, sort of AI was the thing of science fiction. My partner, John Scully, and I founded Zeta 15 years ago now. So when John and I founded it, it was really on the premise that, first-party data, so data ownership with a consumer consent was going to be really important in the future of the regulatory environment, and that automation was going to be the next evolution of how corporations were going to run themselves. So I've got this whole sort of narrative to really step back, right? And sort of we started out as nomads. We then became agrarian. We then moved into the Industrial Revolution sort of in the 1870s, 1880s, really starting in Great Britain, then moving to the US in the early 1910s, 1920s. We then became the information technology society that we are today. The big catalyst to the information technology society was sort of the internet and the computer in the opposite order. What did that allow you to do, right? It certainly allowed us to be more productive, but it also led to what we're seeing today in offshoring, right? So why can we have labor in India that services us in the United States? You couldn't do that in the 1800s. Why? Because if I wanted to send a message to my plant manager in India, it would take me weeks to get the letter there.
By ship, yeah.
By the time the letter got there, and he would say, well, I can't do that because this guy can't do that or this. He'd write another letter and he'd send it back. So now it's 2 months. I got the letter back saying they can't actually do what I want them to do. Data moves today in real time. So I can send a message to Farouk, who runs our Indian operation, in a millisecond. And I can actually see what Farouk and his beautiful family are doing because we're friends on Facebook,
Sure.
right? And we do all this stuff. So that was the first big evolution in outsourcing and offshoring, which I know is not popular to a lot of people. But at the end of the day, it became mission critical when companies started to figure it out that other companies did it to maintain a competitive advantage. Now, there are companies today that are sort of made in America, and that's another advantage. And if you look at our company, On Demand Pharmaceuticals, it's a made in America pharmaceuticals, right? Which is an important strategic move for us societally for a whole host of reasons. But when you think about the future, it's automation, right? So if you think about where we're going, when we founded this 15 years ago, we felt that automation was going to be the future. And we started investing first in automation, then in deep learning, then in machine learning. and now in artificial intelligence, because we felt that the ability to first and foremost figure out what people wanted to do next or get to intent required the ingestion of so much data that no human could ever do it. And B, the ability to do what we did, first, we needed to build high quality facilities globally, which is why we called the company Zeta Global, aptly named, right? We have more employees in India than we do anywhere else in the world. Why? Because it gave us a competitive advantage. We have people in India that are as high a quality, if not higher, than many of the people we can employ in the United States or Western Europe. But because of where they are from a geographic perspective, we're able to do that cost efficiently. Now, interestingly enough, it's not as cost efficient as it used to be because supply and demand kick in. So we now have facilities in the Czech Republic. We have facilities in the Philippines. We're trying to move where there's an imbalance between high quality individuals who want to work hard and what it costs to employ them. The next evolution is going to be AI.
Okay, so with that in mind, AI, I'm hearing it takes a lot to get where you are to leverage AI, meaning manpower now expanding to different parts of the world. Won't that cannibalize employment though too? Once AI truly kicks in, you need less of those people.
Listen, so here, and I talked about this, as you know, just on CNBC the other day, right? So Goldman Sachs put out a study that artificial intelligence will eliminate 300 million jobs, which is a lot of jobs, right? But let's start with the Gutenberg printing press. Then let's go to the computer. And then let's go to the internet. In every case that those transformative technologies came along, the world said employment is going to end. It's going to go away as we know it. And each one of those technologies changed the way we work radically, but created far more jobs than it destroyed. Now, will artificial intelligence be the first technology in the history of mankind to eliminate more jobs than it creates? The answer is we should hope so societally. And I'll tell you why. We don't have enough people to take the jobs we have today. We have an aging population globally. According to the World Economic Forum, we are going to hit the max global population, I believe, over the next 20 years and begin to shrink as a species. People are older today and living longer today than at any point in the history of mankind. Who's going to take care of them? So, will 300 million jobs be eliminated, in my opinion? Sure. But we'll create and need hundreds of millions of more people than we're going to have in the workforce over the coming centuries to be able to keep up.
And again, the job will change.
Yes.
The responsibility, role will change.
I publicly say all the time, we are crazy not to be teaching skill sets that people need for employment in school. Right. So there's this great joke, right? Everybody comes out of school, you know the Pythagorean theorem, but you don't know how to do your taxes, right?
Sure. We know the Pythagorean theorem, right, Joe? No, maybe not. Okay. Anyway, let's come back to the Pythagorean.
A squared plus B squared equals C squared. It's actually pretty easy, but I'm not even
let's
sure
talk about Rule 72 and the Pythagorean theorem after we're going to take a real quick break, okay?
A few moments later.
And we are back. Well, off camera, I just was hyping David up and saying how smart you actually are. And I think the funny part is you don't realize how smart you are.
Well, if you want to not feel smart, just have 5 kids. I mean,
Really?
They tell me how dumb I am all the time.
Which is amazing to me. Because they probably, if you were a different human, like you weren't their dad, they'd be like, that guy's a genius. Yeah.
Well, when you were 14 years old, we thought your father knew nothing. And then when you became the age 21, you were so impressed how much he learned.
Well, my oldest daughter's 22. I'm not sure she knows yet. But the good
coming.
news is I can talk about my kids because they would never watch a podcast I was on. That's sort of the funny.
They're
might
going to
watch
watch
it.
this one. We're going to get them to watch this one. No.
But I think it's really impressive how, like you said, you were given this, I guess, diagnosis of
ADHD.
the ADHD and ADD, dyslexia, not being able to read or write. But meanwhile, you're so much more proficient in other things, like being able to speak very well and having definitely a different mind than most people. Did you ever feel like that was a crutch? Like, did you ever get debilitated by the doctors or whoever it was telling you you can't do certain things?
You know, that's a pretty loaded question. You know, it's at some point in everybody's life. I don't care who you are. I think you feel dejected, you feel put down, and you look around you and say, Jesus, right? Like, am I dumb? Am I not smart enough? I was very lucky. My grandfather, Philip Steinberg, was an amazing man who really, I think, understood when I was very young that I was not stupid, that I had this thing that nobody knew what it was. And he started reading about dyslexia. And he was like, I think David has this because he reverses things. I was so lucky. And then in like life's really weird coincidences, I ended up with this incredible tutor, Nina, and she really helped me with it. And then years later, a dear friend of mine from prep school married Nina's son. And I'm like friends with like them on Facebook. So it's like I see it all the time. But she really helped me with it. She was tough on me. I can't say I liked her at the time, but she really put me through it. You also said something really interesting. You said, you know, I tend to speak well, even though I don't write very well. Interestingly enough, I write well now because text from speech really works for me. I do all of my messaging. I should say speech to text rather than text from speech, even though both are grammatically correct. But, you know, my father, who is brilliant, you know, stuttered and still has a stutter. Not as bad as he used to. But I think and I ended up, for a host of reasons, living with my father, just the two of us in New York City for some of my formative years. And I think because he had a challenge speaking, I overcompensated. I learned to speak really well. He's a brilliant writer. Like he could write, I mean, he's written books on like pensions. It's like I could never do that. But literally, and then I always think, and I've read about this, right? When people are disabled, and I wouldn't call dyslexia, being disabled by any means, because I'm very, very blessed. But when you read about people who are disabled, they tend to build incredible competence in other senses, right? So we've all read about people who cannot see, who learn to hear, like you can do So I think for me, because I had a challenge where I actually never really had a problem reading, but I ingest information, I think in ways that are different from other people, and I tend to remember a lot. Other than people's names, which is a constant source of frustration to my wife, who, by the way, is my rock. Like my wife is amazing. She's there for me. She takes care of our kids. She takes care of me. I'm really incredibly blessed to have her. But you know, she's an incredible speller. So even like if we're sending, this is sort of funny, right? So I raised 3 older, amazing kids, 22, 20, and 18. And then I have 2 younger children, 5 and 1. And, you know, my 5-year-old goes to this incredible private school and, you know, and literally I'll have to email someone. My wife will not allow me to email anyone at the school because she doesn't want them to think I'm like really dumb. So like we'll go through this and they have no idea who I am. Like it's not I show up at the school like, hey, how you doing? This is what I do, right? I try to actually tend to be
Just be a dad.
sort of
Yeah.
shockingly
Yeah.
low key as
Yeah,
it relates
right.
to stuff and
Mm-hmm.
hang out with the other parents and, it's, and have great friends at the school. But my wife literally will not allow me to email the school
Why?
because
She doesn't
I'll
want
spell
the
too much
misspelling.
wrong
Yeah.
and they'll think I'm
They're
an
going wrong
idiot.
impression.
And they'll be like, why did we allow this child into this school?
Sure.
And, she's, my wife is amazing.
Wow. Well, I think just from listening to you, there's obviously a lot of things that there's a reason for everything, I think, in my opinion. And it's like a no-brainer why you are where you are and you found the success you found. For everything other than that, putting that aside, I think your gratitude is just like what really stands out to me, because I think you've said it probably 10 times now, how blessed you feel.
I am.
And it's interesting, right? Like, because everybody always talks about how money isn't everything. It doesn't make you happy and it's the root of all evil. And here's a guy that I've never felt this sort of energy from anybody else. Like you have that sense of gratitude more than we've ever had, I think, personally as a guest. So,
Well, listen, first of all, that's quite a compliment. Thank you, Johnny. Not to be confused with Johnny.
right.
By the way, I revert to humor when people compliment me. It makes me very uncomfortable.
We don't want to make
the-
you cry. You don't
Right.
wanna
No, I won't cry. I promise.
we could make you.
Really?
I'll talk about maybe your grandfather a little
No,
more.
I did love my grandfather, but the reality is that money is a tool. It's like a hammer. You can't build a house without a hammer, right? So it's good to have. It's nice to have. One of the greatest studies I've ever read, it was a Harvard study, and I forget how many people over how many years, but it was thousands of people over decades that they studied. And you can synthesize this entire study down to effectively 2 or 3 things on what makes humans happy. Number 1, deep and meaningful relationships. Number 2, having what you need and not being desperate for more. We call that FOMO in your generation, right? But when you think about it, to me, the thing that makes me the happiest is the people in my life. My wife, my children, my friends. I really enjoy my friends. I really like going out to dinner, drinking some great wine. I could say drinking on this show, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
sure.
This
we
is
could
good
have,
on
we
this
could have
show.
a drink on this.
Right.
And,
Well, you have to. Listen, I enjoy that.
and there's not a better host than you, by the way. That comes through having the first time we met. I felt like I knew you. And maybe that's just me being comfortable, and maybe you being comfortable, and us being not pretentious for one. I didn't know anything about you.
By the way, nor I you.
Right,
And we were down at a club that I'm a member of in Maryland, which is a great club. Sort of everybody always wants to play there. I wonder why they let me be a member. But the reality is we're down there, and Dave says, I'm going to bring my buddy, Johnny. And I'm like, great. Right. He comes, and we end up in the bar of the country club, and everybody is going nuts for Johnny drinks. And I'm like, who is this guy? So now all of a sudden I turn around, and in the club, he's behind the bar. This is a huge bar, making drinks. They're taking pictures. They're not even allowed to have phones in the club, and they're taking pictures of them.
They invited me back there. I
understand. Yeah. I didn't think you jumped to the back. I mean, they invited you. To me, it's about relationships. It's about being. And listen, I am very ambitious. Let's not play games with that. I work very hard. I have. And listen, the one thing that most incredibly successful people don't like to talk about, but in their hearts they know is true, is luck plays a bigger part in people's success than anybody likes to talk about.
Correct.
And I'll tell you, I work hard. I've got very good relationship skills. I like to curate really fun dinners and put great people together. My friend Bob Niehaus, who runs GCP Capital, says, I run like salons. Like I just like to bring different people together who can learn from each other and have fun and have a good time.
Right. Well, that's what artificial intelligence cannot do.
Well,
Can't have steak and wine with friends.
So as I like to say, it's the two things that are really safe professionally for the foreseeable future is people who know how to sell, whether you call it relationship management at my level or sales if you're selling a car. It's all the same thing. One is an evolution of the other, and creativity.
Well said.
Those are the two things that we haven't been able to crack the code on yet. And of course, the counter is, well, you can generate lead. Yeah, generating a lead is not creating a relationship and not creating a transaction. And those things are not going away for the foreseeable future.
And those two things are very different, right?
Well, I think
one leads to the other.
Yeah,
yes.
one, they connect, but one is very different than the other.
100%.
It's so interesting you say that because I feel like, and we talked about the last time in the tech talk we had, that seems to be the first job that everybody thinks is going to go, is the sales job, because AI is able to generate.
No.
And you think the opposite.
The first jobs that are going to go are going to be the professional services jobs that are the technical people. Mm-hmm. So if you're a lawyer that is doing the work, not making it rain, your job's going to be automated. Right. Drafting a contract's going to be automated. If you're an accountant doing regular tax returns. Now, I'm not suggesting these people aren't going to find other great employment or this is going to happen next week.
You already see that, though. QuickBooks is helping out.
Oh, yeah. I mean, listen, if people don't understand that this started with automation, it moved into machine learning, and AI is just the next evolution, then they're not really getting it. And, once again, I think that sales jobs, I believe, are very safe for the foreseeable future.
Wow, that's so interesting.
I've always felt that way too, but I thought it was a little biased because I've only been a salesperson. Right?
Yeah.
But there's that emotional connectivity, variable relationship piece to even to, like technology. You could
I love that you already stole my line of wine and steak. Like you're already using it. Like you took it from me.
I watched CNBC.
I can't even use it again now that you've sort of stolen it because you're famous and I'm not.
Catchphrase.
Like I'm going to lose my catchphrase.
But wait, Johnny J said that. Well, no, that's because we talked about it last time too. That we talked about which jobs we think tech will take over, and we both agreed that the restaurant business, for example, like we both hate when you put a QR code down. And yeah, can you do it? From step 0 to step, you could order food. It could be done, but the experience is then lost.
But it also goes back to relationships. Yeah. Even like when I go to a restaurant, and I'm a creature of habit, I go to the same restaurants almost all the time.
You order the same meal?
No, I order different things. But if I'm going to lunch, I go to Wolfgang's and I eat one of two things. If I'm going to dinner, I'm going to Tao, Lavo, Carbone, or Rayo's. Like it's just sort of what I'm doing, right?
That's some lineup, by the way. What a lineup this guy's got.
But listen,
jeez,
it's
who hits in the 4 spot in that lineup?
Probably Luger's, but I love Luger's.
Really?
I think they were very unfair to Luger's.
Losing their Michelin star.
I thought that was very unfair. I think the food is exceptional. If I'm in Manhattan, I like Wolfgang's or Benjamin's. If I want to have like old school, I go to Luger's.
Sure.
I think the best 2 Italian places in town, or 3 Italian places in town.
Okay, listen closely.
Are Carbone, Rayo's, and Lavo.
Ooh, nice.
And
we've never been to Rayo's. We're going to go to Rayo's one night.
Or Lavo.
I'll take you guys. Yeah.
Oh, okay. That was not me asking.
That was asking.
I just know that's a history. I like to take him to places that are of namesake history.
Yeah, I get a few nights a year where Joey and Josh and Mark get me tables there. But
can I ask you something else? Not to change the subject,
may.
and then I want you to be able to wrap this up because he's got to run, and I don't want you to be late. Okay. So the Michelin star.
Rebecca will be very mad if I'm late.
I know that.
My senior
respect. Everyone should have an assistant like Rebecca.
Yes,
because
I'm very blessed. I have a few of them.
You're texting me. I'm 5 minutes out. I'm in the lobby. She's texting Diana.
Who didn't come and get me, but okay.
Cool. She's calling Diana saying he's in the lobby. I'm like, I already know that. He just texted me. Anyway, so the Michelin star.
Yes.
3-star rating?
For which
star?
restaurant?
For any of them.
Can never go
what's
above
hi-
3. I believe 3 is the
three.
highest.
That's right. Now,
They might add a 4th at some point. But
do you know it's
so
3
if you
stars?
see like those 4 or 5-star things, that's not Michelin.
No. But the Michelin star rating has to do with a lot of things. Do you know how it started? How it was created?
Yes, I do. So
I want you to share
Michelin
that.
is a car company that was in France, wanted to entice people to drive more often so they would burn through more tires. And they started a separate division of the company called the Michelin rating system to start rating restaurants on a driving guide around France with the ultimate goal of selling more tires.
And then they gave a booklet to say, here's where you go, here's the place you should stop for gas, for eat, for hotel. That's how it started. And today, that phrase of Michelin rating.
Now, how impressed are you that I actually know that?
He's almost
I'm not.
upset because he wanted to tell him.
No.
He was waiting to tell that story.
He wanted me not to know.
I know he did.
He did.
I'm so happy you knew it.
He wanted me not to know.
No,
great.
As I said,
there's
I
no
ingest information and remember things in an odd way.
There's no chance that
Because nobody else would have known that. There's not another
sure
guess we would have.
I'm sure whoever just inherited their share of Michelin knows that.
Yeah,
But,
exactly.
the big Michelin man, the big, tire guy.
I never knew that, so that's a really cool
Yeah,
story.
well, I was trying to tell you that one time, and
Sorry.
you dismissed me. But
Well,
anyway,
David just told me a great story, so now I'm going to remember it forever.
All right, so okay, I stole the steak and wine.
Well, no,
Exactly.
but back to your point, and then I'll let you wrap up. Right? You never really. My kids don't look at me sort of the way other people might look at me, or vice versa. Right? So the funniest commercial now is that Progressive commercial.
Yes. I
Where
love
the
that.
TV dad is on the couch and the actual dad is like, you should call Progressive for your insurance. It's like, I don't know, Dad. I don't get it. And the TV dad is like, you should call Progressive. He's like, that's a great idea. I'm going to call. That's like my kids.
I live that. I live that with him every day.
I do think my older kids, maybe this is just me, are starting to respect me a little more and maybe like me a little more. And for me, I've always aspired to be really, really close to my children. And I feel like I've done the best I can to get there, which doesn't mean I'm always there, but I try hard.
You feel like they're starting to like you. That's an interesting one because there is a separation at some point of like, yeah, this is my dad, but if it was a random guy, would I still like him? And if the answer is yes, then you have a better chance of having a relationship. Because if the answer is no, yeah, they may respect you as a father and they'll listen to some things you say, but you'll never form that real, like you said, the reason, number one, people are happy, deep and meaningful relationships. I like to wrap every podcast up with 2 questions, but today I want to change the question. I do want to change the question because what you said before was super interesting to me. The 2 reasons why people are normally happy. Number 1, we just said. And number 2 was the sensation that they don't need more, right? They're kind of happy with what they have. So coming from somebody like you who has found, like we said, a ton of success in his life, and like you just mentioned, has this crazy, crazy ambition for more, how do you balance that? Like, how do you balance the sensation and feeling of contentment with, yeah, that's great, but I want to just keep pushing?
It's really hard. And that's a really good question, right? So I separate my emotions from my intellect and have to compartmentalize them to do so. By way of example, I will always be that kid that everybody thought would fail because I was stupid. And I will always want to win because I have a massive chip on my shoulder because of it. And emotionally, the quote, little David in me will never not be that person. And I will always want to win. At the same time, intellectually, and at my age now, I'm able to look at my life and be like, wow, how did I get here? And it is a bit of a separation, right? And sometimes you've got to unleash that emotional kid who's like, and I won't curse here, but like, F it. And I'm going to go out and I am going to fucking win.
Oh, well, there it is again.
Yeah.
Well, you told me to go
Good.
ahead.
Let it rip. Let
You
it
said
rip.
do it. So, yeah, maybe we'll edit that out.
No, that's fine.
no,
That's
okay.
awesome.
Okay.
That's a really good analogy.
But yet when I get home at night, from a cathartic perspective, the first thing I like to do is say hi to my wife and kids. And I look at my wife and I think, Jesus, what is she doing with me? I'm super lucky. And then I go into, it sound like too much of a douche, but my wine cellar, and I pick out like a great bottle of wine that I want to drink. And I open it up and I'm like, this is great. And, usually I'm doing it with a great friend.
Nice.
Or my wife. And you have to be able to separate that. It's harder when you're younger.
Yes.
For me, my ambition when I was younger was very raw and very naked. The other thing you learn to do if you want to have deep and meaningful relationships with other people is subjugate that ambition. Because if you don't, then people don't want to hang out with you. Like it's just not what people want to do. And, for me, I ultimately, I just really like being around other people. Like it's why I'm always, like I pride myself on always being on time. Like I do not like being late, but I hate ending conversations. Like I could talk to you guys all day.
We feel the same way.
Yeah.
I just love to hang out.
Yeah.
And, it's, I'm going from here. I got to get back to the office, do some stuff. Then I'm having a lunch and I'm going to be hanging out with a bunch of other guys at lunch. And then,
Perfect.
I got to stop by a few things tonight. And, it's just sort of how my day rolls.
That's awesome. That's great. Well, yeah, we don't want to take up too much more of your time. And I think that's it for the episode here. Guys, as always, like, subscribe, share with a friend. Cheers. Enjoy the day.
Thank you, David.
Thank you, Johnnies.
Thanks,
Love
guys.
it.